With everything happening in the world, more people than ever are looking for their plan B, a second citizenship they can fall back on. But what I've been seeing is more of those folks are saying that they're going to stay put in their home country for now and have the passport as a plan B. So they want to know, how do I get a passport without moving? I'm going to break down the options. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. The question that we get asked was, what's the lowest cost citizenship by investment programs that also has the most lax residence requirements? And so I'm going to expand this into the greater conversation of how do I get citizenship without moving? Because that's what I am seeing. That's what our team is seeing here at Nomad Capitalist. As a lot of people are coming and saying, I need a plan B. But they don't necessarily want to change their lifestyle. I'm seeing more people who have families. We're seeing more and more families with lots of kids, people adding their parents-in-law, their parents, people adding their kids, their adult kids. I have a couple different people where they're doing 4 or 5 different applications because the entire extended family is getting in on it. They don't want to move. So how do you do it? Well, the first thing that they mention in this question is citizenship by investment. Now, by its very nature, citizenship by investment requires an investment of money rather than of time. And so if you look at how I get a second citizenship, you can pay in a number of different ways, the most common ways being with your time and your effort. So I'm going to move to Germany, or I'm going to move to Armenia, or I'm going to move to Colombia, and I'm going to spend whatever the amount of time that I need to live there is. I'm going to learn the language. I'm going to pass a test on the history of the country. I'm going to do whatever the requirements are to become a citizen, the same way someone might move to your country. If you live in the United States, you see the naturalization ceremonies that take place normally. Same kind of thing, right? The U.S. is one of the more strict countries in terms of physical presence, in terms of all the requirements, but you get the idea. And so if you're trying to get away from that, then you can pay with your money. That's what citizenship by investment is all about. You've got about a dozen programs that I would call citizenship by investment right now. You could say that some are on the border. But if you look at the Caribbean, which is where a lot of people start looking at citizenship by investment, only one of those programs even requires you to ever go there, Antigua and Barbuda, which requires that you go there for a couple days in the first 5 years, basically to renew your passport. I don't think it's that bad of a thing to do. I think going to your new citizenship country is a nice thing to do. But if you look at St. Lucia, Grenada, if you look at St. Kitts and Dominica, you don't need to go there during the process. You don't need to go there after the process. You don't even need to learn the language, which if you are watching this is English. So in terms of physical presence, that is going to have the most lax requirements. Now, which is the least expensive depends on your situation. If you're a single, St. Lucia or Dominica are the most competitively priced. Antigua and Barbuda, they claim a $100,000 donation, which is what the other two have, but there's also a processing fee on top of that, so that's more expensive. But if you're a family of 4, Antigua and Barbuda is going to be more competitive than the others. If you're in crypto, some of the programs aren't going to be as readily available to you if all of your wealth, or substantially all of your wealth, is in crypto. Doesn't make necessarily one country more crypto friendly than the other, but it means that the banks there have their own different criteria. So which is the least expensive? You can start at $100,000 and go on up. Depends on your family size, depends on the source of your wealth, depends on other issues, right? And so you're going to spend somewhere in the low 6 figures for that. Now, if you go to Europe, you've got a couple of different programs. Malta technically does not have a citizenship by investment. They call it the MEIN. Bulgaria, I would say that the wait there makes it not quite a citizenship by investment program, more of a fast-track residence program. Montenegro's program is gone. Moldova's program is gone. So these are programs that, whatever you want to call them, are going to fast-track you for citizenship, but you're looking at either donation in the case of Malta or investment in the case of Bulgaria in the low 7 figures. That does not meet the criteria of lowest. But what does come out is you'll see in the wealth-hating media, Malta, for example, where you'll see people saying, hey, go and spend there 14 days. That's what you need to do to qualify. And people get upset by that. But what you're contributing is a high 6-figure euro amount of money to the country, which they've used to actually, be pretty resilient. And that's why they want to keep doing that. These programs have relatively stringent due diligence. They would say very stringent due diligence, more so than any other naturalization or citizenship procedure. So in terms of lax residence requirements, you're not spending a lot of time in any place where they're putting you on a fast track or they're giving you direct citizenship by investment. The same could be said in Turkey. You might need to go there for a couple days if you're doing the real estate investment, if you're opening a bank account to fund the real estate investment, or if you're just putting money in the bank account, you probably do need to set foot there. But it's a pretty de minimis amount of time, and there's really no residence requirement. So by default, citizenship by investment, you're not spending time. If you don't even want to leave your home, then something like the Caribbean is probably the best fit because you're just purely making a donation. You're not selecting property. You're not going and putting in time in a country in Europe. And so that would be what you would want to do. Plus, it's going to be cheaper. So again, that's the very nature of citizenship by investment. Now, you can look at other things. Citizenship by descent. Have people talk to you recently. They qualify for German. They qualify for Polish. They qualify for Mexican. In most cases, perhaps, you could do that in your home country. Now, you may be able to speed it up in the case of some countries like Italy, where you're going to Italy to make the process for citizenship by descent go faster. Some citizenship by descents, as I've been saying recently, are generally taking a couple of years right now, even the ones that were generally faster. But that's one where you don't really need to move there. If you're entitled citizenship by descent through a parent, through a grandparent, through a great-grandparent, in some cases you can even go further back to a certain year potentially. You don't need to move for that. Again, if you want to speed up Italy and you want to go spend some time there, you can do that, but you don't have to. I helped numerous friends of mine get citizenship by descent. They never left the house other than to go to the embassy for their appointment and to pick up their passport. So citizenship by descent can work if you qualify. Same thing could happen if you have a spouse. In some cases, you can do that. It's much more difficult than by descent. If you were born in another country, occasionally I find someone who's an American, but they were born in Canada and they don't really quite realize they're Canadian by virtue of birth. Had a similar situation recently with someone born in Mexico, or I think their parent was born in Mexico, so they were able to do that. So check your family tree, check your family. The other thing is if you don't have the kind of six-figure investment, you don't have the family tree, something like a paper residence has a lower residence requirement in that, unlike many developed countries who have very strict immigration guidelines, a paper residence country is only going to say, listen, you must be a resident for X number of years. So you get a residence permit in that country. Perhaps you make an investment. You put some money in the bank. You buy a piece of property, what have you. And they may say, hey, after 3 years of being a resident, after 5 years of being a resident, without specifying the amount of time, you can apply for citizenship. Now, in some countries, particularly in some civil law countries like in Latin America, and people have argued with me on this, but I've seen cases where in a country like in Argentina, for example, or a Uruguay, they may not have it extremely laid out, or they may have it laid out, but you can ask for an exception. But it's up to an individual person, like a judge, to make a decision in some of these countries. And so that depends on, what kind of case are you going to make. In other countries, it might just be a matter of, hey, you need to spend 1 day a year here to maintain your residence. So you look at, a country like Colombia. Can you, without full-time moving to Colombia, work towards citizenship if you make an investment? You can. Is 1 day a year enough? Perhaps not. But you can keep a relatively small amount of time. On the other hand, you see countries like Panama where they say, hey, 1 day to keep your permanent residence, but even though you can apply for citizenship after X number of years, it really doesn't work. So you want to make sure with the paper residence, there's at least some kind of track record that it works. Now, if you're waiting 3 or 5 years, who knows what can happen in 3 or 5 years, so it's not going to be 100%, but that's why, rather than donating $100,000 plus paying a bunch of fees for citizenship by investment, maybe you're putting $25,000 in the bank, which you can take out later once you have your citizenship, and you're not going to pay as many fees for things like due diligence. It's going to be a more affordable process for these paper residences. Now, the problem with paper residences is they change. You had a country like Paraguay not that long ago. Everyone was going there, and they were doing their de minimis amount of time of physical presence and thinking, hey, after 3 years, I'm going to apply for citizenship. Well, then people started to take advantage, and the word got out, and the government said, we don't want this nonsense. And so Paraguay is not a bad option if you want to live there. They have a good tax regime for many people. I don't know if you want to live in Paraguay for a substantial amount of time, but you can still, get the citizenship, but you're not going to get it by never being there. And so for a time being, we kind of stopped this rush, but for a time being, it was like that was code for fast, easy, and cheap second passport. And it just wasn't true. But what country wants to be known for that? And so I think a lot of the good paper residences are kept under wraps. There aren't that many of them. But if you don't have the money for citizenship by investment, you want to look at something like that where you just obtain residence and you're willing to do a bit more legwork than you would for a citizenship by investment because it's cheaper. So you really have to decide, am I willing to put in some time? And if I've got a whole family, by the way, and I've had families of 6 or 7 people, they don't like a paper residence because they look at, I have to get on a plane every year and go for, even if it's a day, some of these countries. By the way, I wouldn't necessarily call this a paper residence, but the Portugal Golden Visa, 7 days a year, you can move towards naturalization. I think some other connections to the country would be helpful, but you can do that. That's going to be a more expensive paper residence. You're going to be looking at probably about €500,000 if you're doing a good investment. But that could be a way to get a higher quality passport without making a substantial adjustment in your life. That's a pretty well-known paper residence. Some of the others, your mileage may vary. So those are 3 ways you can get a second citizenship without moving. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.